Hey guys, tonight we slip into the silent, calculated world of a phantom. We're going to follow the shadow of a thief so meticulous, so ghost-like, he seems to walk through walls and vanish into thin air. But his one mistake wasn't leaving a clue, it was underestimating who or what might come looking for him. This is a story about the kind of predator you can't see, and the one you can't outrun, so you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. The rustle in the bushes outside your window might just be the wind, or it might be something else entirely. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Every click helps this little corner of the internet grow. And when you're done, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night air in the upscale neighborhood of Silver Creek is thick and sweet with the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut lawns. It's the kind of place where security systems are as common as manicured hedges, and crime is something you read about happening in other, less fortunate parts of the city. But inside the two-story colonial at 112 Arbor Lane, the peace is being methodically dismantled. You're watching a man move through the house with the unhurried grace of a surgeon. He's dressed in dark, non-reflective clothing, his face obscured by a simple balaclava, his hands sheathed in thin leather gloves. He doesn't smash a window or kick in a door. Instead, he exploits a small second-story bathroom window, one the homeowners, the Abernathys, rarely use. The lock is old, simple, and yields to his tools with a barely audible click. He drops to the plush bath mat without a sound, his movements economical and precise. He's already studied the home's layout, memorized the security system schematics which he disabled from an external junction box an hour earlier. An almost imperceptible smell of ozone, like the air after a lightning strike, hangs near the main control panel in the foyer, the only hint of his electronic sabotage. His target isn't the flat-screen TV or the silverware. He glides past it all, his focus singular. He heads for the master's study, where a heavy, fireproof safe is bolted to the floor inside a custom-built bookshelf. This is the prize. For the next 20 minutes, the only sounds are the whisper of his clothes and the delicate metallic purr of a high-end stethoscope against the safe's dial. Click. Whir. Click. He works with an unnerving patience, a craftsman absorbed in his art. Finally, a deep, satisfying thud echoes as the tumblers aligned and the bolt retracts. He pulls the heavy door open, revealing not stacks of cash, but velvet-lined trays of rare coins, the Abernathy collection. Famous in niche circles, nearly priceless, and utterly untraceable once melted down or sold to the right private collector. He transfers the coins into a specially padded satchel, working quickly now. And then, he does something strange. From a small pouch on his belt, he removes a single iridescent feather, long, blue-green, and unmistakably from a peacock. He places it delicately in the center of the empty safe, a bizarre, silent signature. Then he's gone, closing the safe door, wiping the dial, and exiting the same way he came, melting back into the manicured darkness. The Abernathys returned 2 days later, sun-kissed and relaxed from their trip to the Bahamas. They don't notice a thing. It's only when Mr. Abernathy decides to admire his prized 1804 silver dollar that the violation becomes clear. The police are called, and the initial scene is a detective's nightmare. No forced entry, no prints, no witnesses. The security system log is wiped clean. It's a ghost job, a high-level professional. The detectives are ready to label it unsolvable. Another case file destined to gather dust in the cold cabinet. That is, until a young, eager-eyed patrolman, conducting a final, just-in-case, sweep of the exterior, spots it. A single, partial boot print in a patch of soft, damp earth beneath that second-story bathroom window, protected from the sun by a large azalea bush. It's an almost perfect impression of a heel and arch, preserved in the mud. This is the first crack in the Phantom's perfect crime. An ironic twist, really. The man who defeated a $1 million security system was tripped up by a patch of dirt. Back at the precinct, the print reveals he was wearing a specific model of Italian hiking boot, a brand favored by serious mountaineers, and costing upwards of $600 a pair. This isn't a desperate junkie. This is a man who invests in his equipment. But the feather is what truly baffles the investigators. It's sent to the lab, but the gesture itself is the puzzle. Criminologists have long debated the meaning of such calling cards. Experts still argue whether leaving a signature item is a manifestation of narcissistic pride, a taunt aimed directly at law enforcement, or if it serves a deeper ritualistic purpose for the perpetrator, an essential part of their psychological script. Are they showing off, or are they fulfilling a compulsion they can't control? The case stalls. The boot is too niche to trace easily, the coins have vanished into the ether of the black market, and the feather feels more like a riddle than a clue. The trail is cold, the scent gone. As the lead detective, a wary veteran named Carmichael, stares at the whiteboard, he knows the odds. The first 48 hours are critical in any investigation, a principle known in law enforcement as the Golden 48. After that, the chances of solving a case plummet with every passing hour. We're well past that now. He's about to send everyone home when he remembers a story a retiring canine officer told him years ago about a scent trail that was followed for 3 days across 2 counties. It seems impossible. A Hail Mary. But what have they got to lose? It's the ultimate irony. A crime so technologically sophisticated, so modern in its execution, can only be unraveled by the most primal tool in their arsenal. He picks up his phone. "Get me Miller from the canine unit. Tell him to bring the dog."
An hour later, a different kind of vehicle pulls up to the curb at 112 Arbor Lane. It's not a sleek black and white cruiser, but a marked Ford Explorer SUV with special vents and a reinforced cage system visible through the rear windows. Officer Dave Miller steps out. He's leaner than the other cops on scene, with a quiet intensity in his eyes that seems to absorb everything without judgment. He doesn't project authority, he carries it, like a well-worn tool. A decal on the rear window reads, "My canine is smarter than your honor student." From the other side, a deep, controlled whine signals the presence of his partner. Miller opens the door, and Rogue emerges. He's a magnificent Belgian Malinois, all fawn-colored muscle and dark-muzzled alertness, his ears pricked forward, taking in the scene with an intelligence that's almost human. He's not here to be petted, he's here to work. Detective Carmichael meets them on the lawn, his expression a mixture of desperation and skepticism. "Miller, thanks for coming. The scene's gone cold, but we have one point of contact." He leads them to the infamous patch of mud. Nearby, a forensics tech is showing Carmichael a tablet. "We pulled footage from a neighbor's driveway cam, but it's a joke. On the screen, a pixelated blob of a human figure detaches from the shadows of the Abernathy house at 3:14 a.m. The figure's indistinct, a fleeting ghost with no discernible features, disappearing from frame in less than 3 seconds. It's useless. An ironic twist in an age of constant surveillance, they have a picture of everything and a clear view of nothing. Miller ignores the tablet. He crouches by the boot print, his attention focused entirely on the earth. "Has this been cast yet?" he asks. "No, we held off, hoping you could get a clean pull." Miller nods, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. He pulls a kit from his vest. Inside are sterile gauze pads and evidence bags. He carefully presses a pad into the deepest part of the print, letting it absorb the microscopic skin cells, the sweat, the unique cocktail of human odor left behind. He seals it in a bag, then prepares another for Rogue. This one he places in a small, breathable container. He kneels in front of his partner, holding the container near his nose. "Find him, Rogue," he says, his voice low and calm. "Such." It's a simple German command, "Seek." Rogue's entire demeanor shifts. His body lowers slightly, his tail straightens, and his nose begins to work, twitching and sampling the air in short, powerful sniffs. He's 1,000,000 years of predator evolution culminating in this single focused task. He ignores the trampled grass where a dozen cops have stood. He's looking for one specific scent profile among a sea of olfactory noise. He makes a few wide, casting circles around the boot print, then suddenly freezes. His head snaps up, pointing directly toward the street. A young officer standing nearby smirks. "See, probably had a car waiting right there." Miller says nothing. He just watches his dog. Rogue takes a few steps toward the street, then stops, shaking his head almost imperceptibly, as if clearing a confusing signal. He turns and casts back the other way, his nose skimming just above the ground. This is where the human element of canine handling comes in. An inexperienced officer might pull the dog toward the road, assuming it knows best. Miller knows better. He trusts the dog's hesitation. Rogue is telling him the trail is contaminated here, layered with fresher scents from the responding officers and passing cars. He's trying to isolate the older, fainter trail of their ghost. Suddenly, Rogue makes a sharp 90-degree turn, trotting with purpose along the Abernathy's perfectly manicured property line. He's found it. The trail is faint, but it's there. Miller follows, the long lead loose in his hand, his eyes locked on Rogue's tail, which now acts as a furry barometer of the scent's strength. As they pass the neighboring house, Rogue does something odd. He veers off the trail and shoves his nose against a cheerful ceramic garden gnome sitting next to a mailbox. He sniffs it intensely for a full 10 seconds, even nudging it with his muzzle before looking back at Miller and returning to the trail. Miller makes a mental note. It's strange, out of character for Rogue to be distracted while tracking. Was it a random animal scent, or did our suspect touch it? There's no way to know, but in this line of work, you don't dismiss the unusual. As they continue, the rookie from before walks alongside them, impressed. "So, if you find him, can the dog, testify in court?" Miller allows a small smile. "Not exactly, but what we can do is a scent lineup. We'd take a scent article from the suspect, place it with 4 or 5 decoys, and if Rogue alerts on the suspect's scent, it becomes powerful corroborating evidence." Of course, the use of scent evidence is a hot-button topic in the legal world. Experts still argue about its scientific reliability. While a dog's nose is exponentially more powerful than any man-made instrument, a canine's alert is a behavior, not a printout. Defense attorneys can argue the handler cued the dog, consciously or not, or that the scent evidence was contaminated. Its admissibility varies wildly from state to state and even from judge to judge, making it a constant point of legal debate. The trail continues for another 200 yards, winding behind the opulent houses. The detectives following behind are getting perplexed. Their working theory was a quick smash and grab with a getaway car. This leisurely stroll through the backyards doesn't fit. They assumed their man was long gone, miles away in another city, but the dog is telling them a different story. And then comes the second twist of the day. They reach the end of the manicured cul-de-sac. To the left is the main road out of the neighborhood. To the right is a dense 10-acre patch of undeveloped woodland and marsh that the locals call the Blackwater Preserve. Every logical bone in Carmichael's body tells him the suspect went left to a vehicle, but Rogue doesn't even hesitate. He pulls hard to the right, straight for the foreboding tree line. The scent of honeysuckle gives way to the damp, earthy smell of decay and stagnant water. Their ghost didn't drive away. He walked into the swamp.
The moment you and Rogue cross the threshold from manicured lawn to wild preserve, the world changes. The air grows heavy, humid and primal, thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. The neatly trimmed grass gives way to tangled roots and sucking mud that grabs at your boots with a greedy slurp. It's 10 degrees cooler under the dense canopy of oak and cypress trees, and the ambient light shifts from suburban sodium vapor orange to a murky, dappled green. The sounds of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the bark of a distant pet, are swallowed by the buzz of insects and the rustle of things unseen in the undergrowth. Detective Carmichael and the 2 uniforms following you are now out of their element, their shiny city shoes and starched collars looking absurd in this primordial soup. Rogue, however, is home. His focus intensifies. His movements become more fluid. He's no longer a canine unit. He's a wolf on the hunt, every muscle and nerve ending dedicated to the trail. The long lead connecting you to him is a live wire, transmitting every nuance of his search. You feel the subtle pull as the scent strengthens, the slight slackening as it fades. You're not just following a dog, you're engaged in a silent, high-stakes dialogue. He's the nose, but you're the brain, interpreting his signals, managing his pace, keeping him focused. An ironic thought crosses your mind. Your multi-million-dollar police department, with its thermal cameras and GPS tracking, is now wholly reliant on a 4-year-old dog's nose and your ability to read its twitch. The first half hour is a brutal grind. Thorny vines snag at your clothes, and low-hanging branches seem to reach for your eyes. The uniforms are struggling, breathing heavily, their quiet grumbling a constant background noise. "You sure about this, Miller?" Carmichael pants, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "This feels like a wild goose chase." You don't answer. You just point with your chin at Rogue, who is navigating a thicket of saw palmetto with unwavering determination. The dog's desire is the only compass that matters right now. As you push deeper, one of the younger officers, a rookie named Evans, asks, "Detective, this is the preserve, but it backs up onto a bunch of private land. Are we good to be back here?" Carmichael, still catching his breath, grunts, "Hot pursuit, or close enough. The legal principle is called exigent circumstances. We have reason to believe a felony suspect is actively evading us. In a situation like this, the immediate need to apprehend a suspect and prevent the destruction of evidence can override the warrant requirement. So yes, Evans, we're good. Now try to keep up." The trail leads you to the edge of a slow-moving tea-colored creek. The water is slick with algae, and the banks are a mess of slick clay. Rogue stops dead, whining in frustration. Water is a tracker's enemy. It can wash away a scent trail completely, or worse, carry it in unpredictable directions. He casts back and forth along the bank, his nose practically submerged in the mud. He's lost it. Carmichael sighs, the sound heavy with defeat. That's it then. He walked the creek. We'll never find which way he went. But you watch Rogue. He's not giving up. He's working the problem. Suddenly he stops, his body rigid, and focuses on a patch of ferns a few feet from the bank. He paws at the spot, then looks back at you, a clear, intelligent signal. You crouch down, pushing the wet fronds aside. There, half buried in the mud, is a cheap, disposable plastic water bottle, its cap screwed on tight. It's the kind of thing that wouldn't warrant a second glance on a city street, but out here, it's an artifact, a sign of human passage. You carefully bag it as evidence. It's not much, but it's a victory. He was here. He stopped, he drank, he rested. Your suspect's choice of this punishing escape route is a puzzle that gnaws at the detectives. This leads to a quiet debate among criminologists on what is known as geographic profiling. Experts still argue whether an offender's mental map, their choice of crime scene, hideout, and escape route, is a reflection of familiarity or psychology. Is he a local, someone who played in these woods as a kid and knows every hidden path? Or is this a conscious display of physical superiority, a trained survivalist deliberately choosing the most challenging terrain to weed out pursuers? It's a chilling thought. This isn't a simple burglar. This is a predator who is as comfortable in the wild as he is bypassing an alarm system. You cross the creek, the cold water a shock as it floods your boots. On the other side, the ground rises into a series of small wooded hills. The air is thinner here and a slight breeze is picked up. And for Rogue, that's a game changer. He lifts his head, his nostrils flaring, sampling the wind itself. He's no longer tracking on the ground. He's air scenting. A far more difficult and less precise method, but it tells you one thing. The suspect is close. Close enough that his scent is still hanging in the air. The final ironic twist of the morning, the very thing that made the ground track harder, the open, breezy terrain, is now helping you close the distance. Rogue lets out a low, guttural growl, the first sound he's made since you began. It's not a bark of discovery. It's a sound of aggression. The hunt has shifted. He no longer just smells a trail. He smells a man. And he's pulling you forward now, not with the steady pressure of a search, but with the hard, eager lunges of a chase. The swamp didn't stop him, but it seems to have led you right to his door.
The change in Rogue's behavior sends a jolt of adrenaline through you and the trailing officers. The slow, methodical track is over. This is now a controlled sprint up the pine-strewn hill. You're holding the lead with two hands, letting Rogue's powerful legs pull you through the underbrush. His focus is absolute, a black-muzzled projectile aimed at a single point somewhere over the rise. The air scenting is a clear indicator that your quarry is either stationary or moving slowly, creating a scent cone that the breeze is delivering directly to Rogue. You crest the fuel, and there it is. Tucked into a small natural clearing and almost perfectly camouflaged by the surrounding foliage is a small, ramshackle cabin. It's more of a hunter's shack, really, weather-beaten with a rusting tin roof and a crooked porch. It looks like it's been forgotten by time. Carmichael signals for everyone to halt and drop to a low crouch. He pulls out his binoculars, his face a mask of disbelief. "I'll be damned," he whispers. "This place isn't on any county maps. It's a ghost property." The cabin is the definition of a prepper's hideout. It has a small, discreet solar panel on the roof, a rain catchment system feeding into a large barrel, and a woodpile stacked with military precision. This isn't just a place to lie low for a night, it's a fully functional, off-grid sanctuary. Your phantom is no mere thief. He's a survivalist, a meticulous planner who prepared this bolt hole long in advance. The level of foresight is chilling. He didn't just plan the heist, he planned the escape, the pursuit, and the aftermath. You all watch the cabin for 10 agonizing minutes. There's no movement, no smoke from the chimney, no sound except the whispering pines. It could be empty. The suspect could have passed through hours ago, but Rogue says otherwise. He's low to the ground, hackles raised, a low growl still rumbling in his chest. He's telling you with absolute certainty that the man you're looking for is inside that cabin. You unclip the long tracking lead and attach a shorter, 6-foot tactical lead. The dialogue changes. This is no longer find, it's prepare. As the team strategizes in hushed whispers, you do your own quiet assessment. You remember the odd detail from the start of the track, Rogue's intense interest in the ceramic garden gnome. It seemed random then, but now a theory clicks into place. What if your suspect on his way out of the neighborhood used the gnome as a practice target, a scent marker? He might have touched it deliberately to see if any canine unit could even pick up a trail so faint. It's an act of pure intellectual arrogance, testing the very tool that would eventually hunt him down. He's not just evading capture, he's conducting an experiment. This adds another layer to the man's psychology. He's not just careful, he's a gamesman. The plan is simple. 2 officers will circle to cover the rear of the cabin. Carmichael and Evans will take the front. You and Rogue will be the tip of the spear. The approach is silent, coordinated. As you get closer, you see the fatal flaw in his perfect hideout. In his quest for seclusion, he chose a location with only one primary direction of approach, the hill you just climbed. To the back and sides, the terrain drops off into steep, rocky ravines. He built himself a fortress, but he also built himself a trap. There is no easy escape. It's an incredible oversight for a man so meticulous, a classic case of what criminal psychologists call overinvestment. Experts still argue whether hyper-focused criminals are more or less likely to make simple mistakes. Does their intense focus on complex details like safe cracking and electronics cause them to overlook the obvious, like basic tactical positioning? Or does their arrogance simply blind them to the possibility of being outsmarted? Carmichael uses a bullhorn. "This is the police. We have the house surrounded. Come out with your hands up." The only reply is the chirping of a lone cricket. A full minute passes. The tension is a physical thing, a weight on your chest. Then the silence is shattered not by a gunshot, but the distinct sound of a heavy bolt sliding home on the inside of the cabin door. He's not surrendering. He's digging in. The situation has just escalated. This is no longer about a burglary. It's about a potential siege. Under US law, this act of barricading himself fundamentally changes the legal landscape. This falls under the legal event known as resisting arrest with violence, even if no violence has yet occurred. The active refusal to comply with a lawful order to exit, combined with the act of fortifying his position, signals intent and elevates the charges he will face exponentially. He's turning a property crime into a violent felony standoff. You position Rogue behind a large pine tree, your hand resting on his back, feeling the tightly coiled muscle beneath his fur. He is perfectly still, perfectly silent, waiting for your command. You can feel his anticipation, his controlled aggression. He understands the shift in tone, the silent language of the officers readying their weapons. He knows the game is about to change. The front door of the cabin remains stubbornly shut, but then you hear a scraping sound from the side of the cabin near one of the small, grimy windows. Carmichael looks at you and gives a short, sharp nod. The suspect isn't going to wait for them to kick in the door. He's making his own move. The quiet hideout is about to become a live theater of desperation.
The scraping sound is followed by the sharp crack of a window frame being pried open. It's on the far side of the cabin, the side partially obscured by a thicket of overgrown rhododendron. "He's going out the side," Evans' whisper shouts, his voice tight with tension. Before Carmichael can even issue a command, a dark-clad figure scrambles out of the window, dropping the 6 feet to the ground with an agile thud. For a split second, you get a clear look at him. He's tall, wiry, and moves with the fluid efficiency of an athlete. He's not surrendering, he's running. And he's not running back the way you came. He's sprinting for the dense woods at the edge of the clearing, toward the steep, treacherous ravines he'd boxed himself in with. It's a desperate, almost suicidal move. "Police, stop!" Carmichael bellows, but the command is swallowed by the woods. The suspect is already a fleeting shadow, disappearing into the twilight gloom of the forest. The officers start to move, but they're clumsy in their tactical gear, weighed down by vests and equipment. They'd never catch him in that terrain, but you and Rogue aren't weighed down. You're built for this. You meet Carmichael's gaze, and he gives you the only command that matters, a sharp, downward nod. Get him. You lean forward, your voice low and urgent. Rogue, was, the German command for apprehend. In an instant, Rogue transforms from a silent statue into a 70-pound missile of muscle and teeth. He explodes from your side, covering the 50 yards to the tree line in a blur of fawn fur. His paws tear at the ground, kicking up clumps of dirt and pine needles. There's no growling now, no warning, just the silent, terrifying speed of a predator closing on its prey. You're running right behind him, your heart pounding in your ears, the tactical lead unclipped and coiled in your hand. This is the moment a canine unit trains for thousands of times. The physical apprehension. The suspect plunges into the darkening woods, and you hear him crashing through the underbrush. He's fast, but he's loud. Rogue is silent. You can hear the man's panic breathing, the snap of twigs under his expensive hiking boots. You can't hear the dog at all. Then you hear a strangled cry of alarm. You burst through a curtain of low-hanging branches just in time to see it happen. The suspect glances over his shoulder, his eyes wide with terror, and in that split second of distraction, his foot catches on an exposed root. He stumbles, pinwheeling his arms for balance. It's the only opening Rogue needs. The dog doesn't go for an arm or a leg. With flawless training, he leaps and makes full mouth contact with the suspect's upper back and shoulder area, the largest, safest target designed to push the suspect off balance and minimize injury. The impact is staggering. The man goes down hard, a sharp oof punched out of him as he hits the forest floor. Rogue doesn't bite and release. He holds. His jaws are locked, his body tense, pinning the man to the ground. It's not an act of aggression, it's an act of control, a living, breathing restraint tool. You're on top of them in seconds. "Get the dog off me!" the man screams, his voice a mixture of pain and pure panic. You put your knee on his back, your voice a calm, authoritative command in the chaos. "Police, stop resisting!" You give Rogue the release command, "Aus!" Instantly, the dog lets go, stepping back, but remaining within inches of the man, a low growl now serving as a clear warning. The suspect doesn't move. The fight is gone from him, replaced by the heaving sobs of a man who was utterly, primally defeated. The irony is thick enough to taste. He tried to run, but he couldn't outrun a force of nature he'd so arrogantly underestimated. As you cuff him, you notice an unusual detail. Tucked into one of the pouches on his tactical belt is not a weapon, but a small leather-bound book. It's a copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. His entire operation, from the silent entry to the calculated escape route, was an intellectual exercise, a real-life strategy game. He wasn't just a thief, he was a scholar of conflict, brought down by an opponent who doesn't read books. The other officers arrive, breathing hard, their flashlights cutting erratic beams through the trees. The chase lasted less than 2 minutes. Later, as they secure the cabin, they find evidence of his meticulous nature everywhere. Maps with multiple escape routes highlighted, a police scanner crackling softly in the corner, detailed notes on the Abernathy's habits. But they also find the legal event that will seal his fate. The coins. They're not hidden. They're laid out on a rough wooden table, arranged in neat, chronological rows, as if for display. He hadn't sold them. He hadn't even tried. He was admiring them. His pride in the acquisition trumped his need for profit. This act of keeping the stolen goods in his direct possession, a principle known as possession of stolen goods, makes the prosecution's job infinitely easier. The debate over canine bite and hold techniques is a fierce one within law enforcement and civil rights circles. Experts still argue whether it constitutes an appropriate level of force. Proponents argue it's one of the most effective and often safest ways to subdue a non-compliant fleeing felon, resulting in fewer injuries to both suspect and officer than batons or tasers. Opponents, however, claim it's a form of excessive force, a canine weapon that can't be recalled with the flick of a switch and can inflict serious injury. The outcome often hinges on the canine's training, the handler's control, and the specific actions of the suspect. Tonight, Rogue's textbook apprehension will be cited as a perfect example of the technique's success. The man has bite marks, yes, but he's alive, and no officer had to draw their weapon. In the cold, dark woods, justice was delivered by a voice in the dark and a growl's reply.
Back at the precinct, the harsh fluorescent lights of Interrogation Room B are a stark contrast to the organic darkness of the woods. The suspect, now identified as 42-year-old Julian Croft, sits hunched over a steel table. He's been medically cleared, the bite marks on his shoulder cleaned and bandaged, and he's traded his sophisticated tactical gear for a standard-issue orange jumpsuit that hangs loosely on his wiry frame. The Phantom has been unmasked, and the reality is surprisingly mundane. He's a former software engineer, a man with a genius-level IQ who was laid off from a high-paying tech firm a year ago. No prior record, no history of violence. He's a guy who lived on the street, the quiet neighbor you'd never look at twice. You're not in the room. You're watching through the one-way mirror with Detective Carmichael, sipping a cup of vending machine coffee that tastes like burnt plastic. Rogue is back in your SUV, likely sleeping. The day's work nothing more to him than a successful and rewarding game of fetch. In the interrogation room, Croft isn't talking. He hasn't said a word since his capture, other than to request a lawyer. But his lawyer is still an hour out, and Carmichael is using the time to lay out the evidence on the table in front of him. It's a classic interrogation technique, the silent treatment coupled with a visual feast of his own undoing. Carmichael places the evidence bags on the table one by one, the boot print cast, the plastic water bottle from the swamp, the bag containing the single peacock feather. Croft's eyes flicker toward the feather, and for the first time, a spark of emotion crosses his face. It's not fear, it's not remorse, it's annoyance, as if Carmichael has misunderstood the punchline to a brilliant joke. Finally, Carmichael speaks, his voice low and conversational. "The feather, Julian. We couldn't figure it out. A calling card? A taunt? What was it?" Croft leans back, a small condescending smile playing on his lips. It wasn't a taunt. It was an homage to Argus Panoptis. Carmichael stares at him blankly. Croft sighs, as if explaining a complex theory to a child. The giant from Greek mythology, the all-seeing herdsman with 100 eyes. When he was killed, the goddess Hera preserved his eyes forever in the tail of a peacock. It's a stunning revelation. The feather wasn't a random signature. It was a deeply symbolic intellectual statement. He saw himself as the all-seeing giant, able to watch and perceive everything, a being of superior observation. The crime was the ultimate expression of this identity. This is the moment the motive clicks into place, and it's more unsettling than simple greed. He didn't need the money.
He needed the validation. He needed to prove to himself and to a world that had discarded him that he was smarter, more capable, more seeing than anyone else. The burglary was just a complex puzzle he'd set for himself. Stealing the coins was a side quest. The main objective was the flawless execution of the plan. This confession of pride, not remorse, is what shocks everyone listening. He's not sorry he broke the law. He's just angry he got caught. He's like a chess grandmaster who's just been checkmated by a clumsy amateur. And the most insulting part, he wasn't beaten by a detective's brilliant deduction, but by what he considers a simple animal. Then, Croft does something that solidifies his fate. He begins to talk, and he can't stop. Spurred by his own bruised ego, he starts to recount the entire heist, not as a confession, but as a lecture. He details how he bypassed the security system, how he studied the Abernathy's vacation photos on social media to confirm their trip, how he practiced on a similar model of safe he bought on the internet. He's not confessing to a crime, he's bragging about his masterpiece. This is a well-documented legal phenomenon, known as the compulsion to confess, but with a narcissistic twist. In standard cases, a suspect confesses out of guilt or pressure. Croft is confessing out of a pathological need to have his genius recognized, even if it's by the very people who captured him. His lawyer would be tearing his hair out if he could hear this. The conversation eventually turns to his escape. "I chose the swamp for a reason," Croft says, his tone smug. "I knew your officers wouldn't have the conditioning to follow. I calculated the calorie expenditure, the terrain difficulty. It was the perfect filter." Carmichael nods slowly. "But you didn't calculate for the dog." Croft scoffs. "A dog, an animal. Its sense of smell is a biological lottery, not an intellectual achievement. It's a tool, a dumb one. You got lucky." This dismissal of Rogue's role reveals his fatal flaw, a profound inability to respect any form of intelligence that isn't his own. It's the ultimate irony. The man who named himself after a mythological all-seeing eye was blind to the most obvious threat. An odd detail emerges when they search Croft's cabin more thoroughly. They find a small, makeshift workbench. On it are dozens of peacock feathers and a set of delicate tools. He hadn't just found the feather. He'd been curating them, studying them, choosing the perfect one for his signature. It's a level of obsessive ritual behavior that borders on the pathological. The question of whether such ritualistic behavior in a crime can be used to argue an insanity defense is a constant source of legal debate. Experts still argue where the line is drawn between meticulous, albeit criminal planning, and a genuine detachment from reality. Could Croft's Argus persona be a delusion, a break from sanity? It's a long shot, but in the world of high-stakes criminal defense, it's a possible avenue. Croft himself seems perfectly sane. His only madness is his pride, and in the end, that's all the prosecution will need. The trial of Julian Croft is less a traumatic courtroom battle and more a quiet procedural dismantling of a man's ego. The evidence is overwhelming. His recorded confession, a masterclass in narcissistic self-incrimination, is played for the jury. The stolen coins recovered from his cabin are presented as exhibits. You, Officer Miller, take the stand, not to testify about what Rogue smelled, but to describe the track, the pursuit, and the apprehension. You are professional, detached, your testimony a dry recitation of the facts. Through it all, Croft watches with a look of detached intellectual curiosity, as if he's a sociologist observing a peculiar tribal ritual rather than a defendant whose freedom is on the line. The jury is out for less than 2 hours. The verdict is guilty on all counts: burglary, grand larceny, and resisting arrest. The final phase of the legal process is the sentencing, where we get our last legal event, the right of allocution. This is the defendant's formal right to make a statement to the court before the judge passes sentence. It's a chance for remorse, for explanation, for a plea for mercy. Croft, true to form, uses his moment not to apologize, but to lecture. He stands, adjusts his jumpsuit, and speaks to the judge with the condescending air of a professor addressing a struggling student. He talks about societal decay, the undervaluing of intellect, and the elegant symmetry of his crime. He never once says he is sorry. The judge is unmoved, sentencing him to 15 years in a state penitentiary, a sentence reflecting the sophistication of the crime and Croft's utter lack of remorse. The case becomes a minor legend in the DA's office, a classic example that flies in the face of the CSI effect. This is the modern courtroom phenomenon where jurors, raised on a diet of slick crime procedurals, have come to expect irrefutable, high-tech forensic evidence in every case. Experts still argue about the true impact of the CSI effect on verdicts. Some studies suggest it has led to wrongful acquittals because juries were disappointed by the lack of DNA or fiber evidence, while others claim prosecutors have simply adapted, spending more time explaining why such evidence isn't always present or necessary. Croft's case is a powerful counter-narrative. It was solved not with mass spectrometers or DNA sequencers, but with a patch of mud, a dog's nose, and old-fashioned police work. A victory for the analog in a digital world. Months later, you receive a letter at the precinct. It's from Croft, sent from his new home behind bars. It's not a threat, and it's certainly not an apology. It's a 5-page, single-spaced, handwritten analysis of his own downfall. This is the final, bizarre detail in a case full of them. He dissects the manhunt from his perspective, complimenting your tenacity, but ultimately attributing his capture to a failure in his threat modeling. He writes, "I accounted for human variables and technological capabilities, but I failed to properly weigh the non-intellectual, purely biological variable of the canine. It's a fascinating, if humiliating, data point." He still doesn't get it. He sees Rogue not as a partner, a trained professional, or even a worthy adversary, but as a random data point, a statistical anomaly that ruins his perfect equation. The ultimate irony: the man obsessed with being the all-seeing eye was undone by his own monumental blind spot. You file the letter away. It's the final chapter of his story. But the story was never really about him. As you steer your canine explorer away from the precinct, leaving the world of courtrooms and criminals behind, the focus shifts to what truly matters. It's the quiet partnership that fills the cab of the truck. Rogue sits in his designated spot in the back, but his head is resting on the center console, his warm breath fogging the corner of the passenger window. His eyes watch you, a look of simple, unwavering trust. This is the reward that doesn't come with a commendation or a press release. It's the silent, unbreakable bond forged through thousands of hours of training, grooming, and shared existence. It's in the way you know from a slight shift in his weight that he needs water, and the way he knows from the tone of your voice that it's the end of a long day. It's a partnership that transcends language, built on a foundation of instinct and mutual respect. You pull into your driveway, and the routine is as comforting as it is necessary. Before you go inside, you let Rogue out in the backyard for a run. He's no longer Canine Rogue, the apprehending predator. He's just a dog, joyfully chasing a tennis ball, his powerful legs stretching out, his tail a blur of happiness. Later, inside, you'll brush the day's dirt and burrs from his coat, check his paws for cuts, and fill his bowl with food. He will lie at your feet while you watch TV, a comforting 70-pound weight of loyalty. He asks for nothing but your presence, and in return he offers everything he has. He is a living, breathing paradox, a gentle soul capable of controlled violence, a playful companion who is also a guardian. And as you watch him drop the slobbery tennis ball near your boots, you can't help but smile at the thought of Julian Croft in his cell, still trying to calculate how a dumb animal could so thoroughly outsmart a genius. He never will. And so the story of Julian Croft, the all-seeing eye, comes to a quiet close. His intricate plans and intellectual arrogance were ultimately no match for a bond forged in loyalty and an instinct honed over millennia. It's a poignant reminder that for all our modern complexities, some truths remain beautifully, terrifyingly simple. The rustle in the dark, the scent on the wind, the unwavering focus of a predator, These are forces that logic and ego can never fully account for. Croft's world was one of cold calculation, but he was brought down by the one variable he could never understand: the warmth of a partnership between a man and his dog. A partnership that continues long after the case files are closed and the cell doors are locked. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. These stories are a privilege to share, and knowing you're out there listening in the quiet hours makes it all the worthwhile. If you found yourself captivated by the chase, please consider leaving a like to show your support. And if you have a story of an incredible animal, share it in the comments below. Every bit of engagement helps our community grow, and I have so many more shadows to explore with you. Until next time, be safe, check your locks, and maybe give your own loyal companion an extra pat on the head. They've earned it.